This time we explore the old town of Rhodes, where in the harbour once stood the fabled Colossus, which although long gone, what does remain is a beautifully preserved walled city which oozes medieval charm, with settings like the Palace of the Grand Master, which looks straight out of an episode of Game of Thrones. So we take in the best views from the towers, ramparts and rooftops, and explore the winding streets for a perfect day in port. So let us show you how to see the old town of Rhodes smarter. Now Rhodes was only our second port of call on the Greek leg of our Virgin Voyages Resilient Lady cruise. And unlike the long day and tender port of Santorini the previous day, it was a nice change to dock so close to the old town, with everything within walking distance, which meant we could explore by foot at our own leisure without the need for a formal excursion. So passing through St Paul's Gate, we arrived at the traditional Greek windmills at the old harbour. Now by exploring first, we avoided the heat later in the day, and by starting from the furthest point from the ship, we could work our way back for when we would be hot and tired later. Just about to head out into the old town, but couldn't come here without coming down the harbour wall, seeing the fort, the windmills, but most importantly these two statues, which are to mark the spot of where the Colossus of Rhodes once sat. Two deer statues, one of a doe, one of a stag, are where the Colossus is said to have straddled the harbour. Make sure you subscribe to follow the rest of our Resilient Lady series, where in our next port of call we visit the last remaining wonder of the ancient world, the Great Pyramid of Giza. But for now we have passed through the city gates and was time to explore the medieval old town. So we've just entered in the walls of the old city, so we started out over here with our ships parked on the edge of the commercial port, had a little wander around, went out on the main pier to see the fort at the end, where the Colossus was, the famous windmills. We've now come into the gates of the old city at the top. We're going to make our way over to the Grand Master's Palace, taking a bit of the side streets around here, then we're going to head out to the walls, do a full circuit round if we can, stand it in the heat, and then come up back through this part of the old town, back to the cruise ship. Now although we had not planned a formal route, as wanted the freedom to explore the side streets and discover hidden gems of this charming city, we had though done our research to know where to find the key sites that were not to be missed. And the first of these was the street of the Knights of Rhodes. Leading from the port to the Palace of the Grand Master, this street housed separate inns for each of the different nationalities of the Knights of the Order of St John, who claimed Rhodes as their home from the 13 through to the 1500s. So as we came into the old town, we literally took the first street on the right after the gate, and that brought us to Odos Ippoton, I think that's how you say it, but most commonly known as the Street of the Knights, the famous Knights of Rhodes. So now we've hiked up there and got our footage. We're now going to head up to the Palace of the Grand Master, just behind me. Now we found pre-booking was not necessary, as could simply pay on the gate on the day. An entry was only €8, or alternatively €10, taking in 3 extra sites of a church, art and archaeological museum. However, tickets and time slots are available online, and I'll put links in the description to the Greek Heritage site, the same one as the Acropolis, if you want to book and reserve in advance. However, the price has substantially increased since our visit to €20 per person. The religious order's history originates back to the Crusades in the Holy Land, after which the Grand Master and the Knights called Rhodes their home for just over 200 years, until 7,000 brave knights held out for a 6-month siege, but were defeated by an army of 100,000 men of the Ottoman Empire. Now, you see the Grand Master's Palace, and actually frankly all of Rhodes. It is actually quite surprising. Allegedly, I did a quick Google, and none of Game of Thrones was actually filmed here, apparently. Whether that's true or not, but it just seemed like it would have been some of the perfect sets for it. But here we go. Now, our cruise was only taking in Greek islands before heading to Egypt, so was not taking in any more ports of call in the Mediterranean. Though if you find this medieval history appealing, it would well be worth considering Malta as a future travel destination. as, after their defeat, the Knights of St John settled there and set about building even more impressive fortifications in the grand harbour of Valletta. But once again were forced to defend against the Ottoman Empire in the Great Siege of Malta. Despite being vastly outnumbered, this time their defence was a success, so were then able to call Malta home for the next couple of centuries. After exploring the interiors, we headed to the grounds behind to explore the fortified gates and walls that protected the palace. And regardless of how much you're into the history, you cannot fail to be impressed by one of the best preserved medieval walled cities in Europe. So if you're enjoying this video, make sure you follow our Virgin Voyages Resilient Lady series, where in our previous episodes we explored the sites of ancient Athens and how to successfully see Santorini avoiding the crowds. And in our upcoming videos we'll explore the wonders of ancient Egypt, from the pyramids of Giza in Cairo to the Valley of the Kings in Luxor, and end our cruise with an extended stay in the glitz and glamour of cosmopolitan Dubai. And as Virgin Cruisers, literally, we'll share our experience and feedback of our first time cruising on Resilient Lady. But most importantly, we please ask that you hit that like and subscribe buttons. It really goes a long way in helping support this channel and for us to bring you even more videos like this again in the future. Thank you so much. Now it is also worth keeping your eyes open, as with so many layers of fortification, it's very easy to miss small details such as this gate, which leads you down into one of the defensive moats and then under the city walls, and then out to the ground level of the city walls from which we saw from the bridge. Now we had originally planned to potentially walk the entire circuit of the city walls. However, as this was the most impressive section by the Grand Master's palace, and with the midday sun was getting a little bit warm, so perhaps was not the best idea in the blazing sun, we decided to assess our options from a high vantage point at the medieval clock tower. Now again, having done our homework, knew this was the highest point of the old town, so we give panoramic views around the city walls. Plus was adjacent to the Suleimani Mosque, and being the largest in Rhodes, gave us a great perspective of its domes and towering minarets. However, what was a pleasant surprise was the walled courtyard and most importantly bar for a much needed drink stop after a long morning of sightseeing. Any excuse. So, great little find here, just behind the Grand Master's castle, literally about 100 yards around the corner. You'll find this great little walled garden bar. Surprisingly breezy because they're quite high up. It's €5 to get in. That came with a drink of your choice. But also with that, you get entrance to the clock tower. So, presume this must have been the old bell mechanism. So, after a very welcome rest stop, and not to mention a cold glass of vino, it was time to face the stairs. Oh dear. Though thankfully we're not that demanding, and most importantly, we're nicely in the shade with a cool breeze. But I am pleased to say it was definitely worth the effort, and was rewarded with great views in all directions from the Grand Master's palace where we had just come from, and on the other side out through the old town, where the architecture was an eclectic mix of both medieval and Ottoman influences. And of course, the route back to our ship. After getting our bearings, we headed downhill down the main street of Socrates, where away from the main drag of touristy shops selling everything through to suits of armour, it was in the narrow side streets that you would find great little places to eat and drink, before coming to Hippocrates Square, the main hub of Rhodes' old town, with again no shortage of places to eat and drink, but being in the most touristy part of the old town, were probably not the best choice or best value for money. So we chose to head a little bit further out to much quieter and no doubt much cheaper venues, and spied this venue with a great little roof garden option. And despite again many flights of stairs, we got to appreciate the old town from another elevated position and a backdrop of Resilient Lady, just in case we couldn't find our way back after a few drinks. From here it was a straight run back to the dock, and was certainly glad that we had taken this option to take a more leisurely pace and to try and circumnavigate the entire city walls in the blazing sun. Just before the gate through the city walls we came to our last landmark spot, the ruins of the Church of the Virgin Mary of the Burgh. So I'm pleased to say, without scrimping on any of the sites, we had managed to visit all of Rhodes Old Town, and with a couple of hours to spare. Plus, starting at the furthest point and working our way back was definitely the right move, as the day got much hotter as it went on. But whichever way you approach it, Rhodes is a perfect cruise port day. With a lot to see in a compact area and the convenience of the ship on your doorstep. Good day?
Yes, very nice.
Yeah, not too strenuous after Santorini, which was full on. Actually glad to be heading back nice and early and having a good couple of hours to chill before dinner. Second day, they haven't left you behind. You got back to the ship what, 2.5 hours before?
Yes.
Are you getting over your anxiety about missing a ship?
At the moment, I am.
At the moment, okay. Let's test that theory in Cairo.
Yes, let's test it then.
With Virgin Voyages, what they do is they actually keep your passport. So in every port we've been to in Europe, they are actually holding your passport, and you just use this to get in and out, which to some people is a bit like freak out and all that kind of stuff. So bear that in mind. The second thing is though, when we're actually coming on to Egypt, they are actually getting the Egyptian authorities on in advance to actually check and stamp the passport. So you must be stamped in and out when you go into Egypt. So we will get our passports back for Egypt, which is let's say a lot more reassuring at the moment, especially given the current situation in Egypt. We want to have our passports on us in case anything, not saying would, should go wrong. We're obviously then free, but you never know. This was because the timing of our voyage coincided with the beginning of hostilities in Gaza. And despite monitoring Foreign Office advice continuously, it was so early in the conflict it was impossible to say what could potentially happen during the cruise, and if our Egypt ports of call would be affected. For now though, we were back on the ship nice and early, which gave us a great opportunity to head to the dock for some Greek meze and a sundowner before heading to dinner later that evening, and leaving the Greek islands before heading to Egypt. So join us in the next episode for our first sea day, to fully experience and explore the ship. And answer, is that tiny pool going to cope with everybody on board? And for a brand that wants to shake up the stuffiness and promotes no children, was the sea day entertainment going to be out there, or your more traditional cruise activities? And given that the cruise package is so comprehensive, why are the drinks not all inclusive as well? And is this the only swinging taking place on this cruise? So let us know in the comments what you thought Virgin Voyages would be like. And if you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. But for now, thanks for watching and hope to see you again soon.